Trese Volume 1, Murder on Balete Drive is an urban fantasy crime noir graphic novel written by Budjette Tan with art by Kajo Baldisimo, and it's heavily inspired by Philippine mythology and folklore and set in the gritty streets of Metro Manila. The main character is Alexandra Trese, who is a mysterious young Filipina detective who the police calls whenever a case takes a dark and supernatural turn. And she's a character that reminds me of Harry Dresden from the Dresden Files, written by Jim Butcher. He's actually a wizard from Chicago who also consults with the police. And she also reminds me of John Constantine as well from DC Comics, who is described as a working class warlock and occult detective who operates in London. Like both of them, Trese is someone who is very familiar with the magical societies existing between the cracks, and she's also an accomplished practitioner of the magical arts and a warrior in her own right. Trese Volume 1 is actually comprised of 4 cases, which you can read in any order that you like. They follow the structure of your typical procedural, like those we see in the television. We are presented with a murder at the beginning of the case or issue, and Trese investigates the scene, and then she reaches out to her sources, employing her arsenal of magical spells and rituals. And then there's a confrontation, of course, so there will be action. And then the resolution, which sometimes takes a dark turn, and it doesn't end happily always, and that's good. I appreciate that in stories. Before I dive into each one of them and describe some synopsis and what my thoughts are and a few nitpicks, let me compare the different versions published over the years. So Trese isn't a new graphic novel that just came out today. It's actually more than 15 years old, initially released back in 2005 as ashcan issues or photocopies sold in the local comic book convention here in the Philippines. And it's collected in 2008, the first 4 cases, by a local publisher named Visprint, which is now defunct. You can see Kajo's art isn't as polished and detail-rich as it is now in the later editions. He relied heavily on contrasting blacks and whites, and the panels are still quite simplistic in their layouts. But these stories and this representation of Philippine mythology combined with modern-day Manila already captured the imagination of a lot of fans here in the Philippines, and it catapulted Trese into one of the pillars of the local comic book scene. So fast forward to 2013, Visprint collected the first 3 volumes of Trese, or the first 13 cases, into a hardcover omnibus called Trese Book of Murders, which is also now out of print and very much sought after. And this actually featured the first phase of Kajo's updates on his art, where we saw more shading and more details in the background. So we saw initial enhancements already at this point. And it also featured more content in the form of journals. So it's like a guide or a diary or an encyclopedia of sorts that expands on what these creatures mean in the context of being a Filipino. So that's a good feature as well, especially for those reading this internationally. So after 2013, we saw individual releases of each issue in color translated in Tagalog. And for the most part, I thought the translations were on point, except that I found in certain lines that the Tagalog was very stiff. And it's not exactly the type of way I would speak with my friends and family here in the Philippines. It kind of felt a bit too formal for my tastes. I also found the first 2 issues actually released from 2015 to 2016 that the printing was kind of smudged and muddy in certain parts. As you can see, certain words in the word balloon are bleeding within themselves. But for issue 3, it was on point. It was printed well, and sadly, it didn't continue anymore with the later issues. Then, we finally arrived to 2020, where Ablaze released Trese internationally, featuring a masterfully remade artwork from Kajo Baldisimo. This is actually the version that is available now globally and is very much in print. And you will find that it evolved a lot, the artwork from Kajo, comparing it to the initial release in 2005. I like to compare it as playing a game in PS1 with PS1 graphics and the like, and it's still good. You can still play the game and enjoy it. But seeing it remade right now with the latest gen graphics, it's night and day. It's really, really, really that stark, the difference. And even if you have the old issues, it's very, very much worth its price for the art. The printing itself is very well done. The blacks are very dense. And aside from a few typos that I found, I see this Ablaze edition as the definitive copy because it features the art the best among all the editions. And it also has the journal printed back here for the benefit of our international readers. So now in 2021, a new publisher, Avenida, has re-released Trese with the extensive remake of the art, but it doesn't include the journal entries, unfortunately. But still, it's very much worth the price at 235 pesos with the updated art. My only nitpick here is that the blacks are deeper and denser with the Ablaze edition comparing to the Avenida edition where it's kind of faded and white out. Aside from that, it still translates well. You can see the details quite clearly. And the word balloons are actually much better here compared to the Ablaze edition. It fits the words much more snugly, I believe. So all in all, if you're here from the Philippines and you're on a tight budget, by all means get the Avenida edition. Next up, I'll be discussing each of the 4 cases found here in Volume 1, starting with at the intersection of Balete and 13th Street. So right off the bat, we were given a murder of a white lady or an entity that haunts a specific area like a balete tree, an old hospital, an abandoned house, and Filipinos love scaring one another with alleged sightings of this type of ghost. And seeing it dead on the street is a perfect introduction to the world of Trese, and it's very intriguing. Within the short span of 24 pages, we were able to learn everything that happened in the story, which I thought was kinda compressed, and weren't able to explore much of Trese's character beyond her badass demeanor. But I thought it's still the perfect gateway into the world of Trese, since it gave us that Manila rich in detail and texture, especially in the later editions. Case 2, Rules of the Race, is actually the most lighthearted story in this collection, and it features Trese going up against a large horse-headed humanoid creature called Tikbalang, and we see the story building upon its world some more by showing us a supernatural pillar hidden in plain sight. While I agree with comments saying that Trese can be too one-dimensional, our series detective actually makes a joke at the end, which I found very amusing given how corny and out of place it was. Then we have Case 3, the tragic case of Dr. Burgos, which gives us a mystery surrounding a dead body burnt to a crisp, but the elements around it in the immediate area are left undamaged and intact. This case actually has the most collateral damage out of all the cases, and unfortunately the ramifications weren't explored and only hinted at off-page. Again, that's because of the compressed nature of the story, but I like how the story progressed and ended overall. And finally, we have Case 4, Our Secret Constellation, which is the darkest story in this volume. It told us a dark tale of what happened to a superhero icon from our local comics, and I wasn't aware of the true nature of the story when I was reading it for the first time, and that twist in the end will hit you hard, especially if you're very familiar with the lore of the hero in question. One nitpick I had with the antagonist here was I thought his ravings was kinda cringy and repetitive, and also this is where we find the famous Higante in the Banyo line, which took me out of the story, to be honest. Because all this time I was reading Trese in the context that it's in translation from Tagalog, and seeing Tagalog words casually mixed in with the English sentences, I thought made for an inconsistent experience. And I thought most of these words could have been easily translated in English anyway. Some of them were actually used interchangeably, like kaluluwa and soul. So I thought Higante in the Banyo could have been said as giant in the toilet easily. And since we're in the topic of the writing, I thought some of the lines could have been edited down and written in a more concise manner to enhance character. But despite that, there is a reason why Trese is such a phenomenon. It gave us a chance to see our city of Manila in a new light, and it gave us cool characters we can root for. And I very much look forward to the potential of this series to tell more wonderful and horrific stories set in the Philippine culture and experience. And if you've seen the anime adaptation in Netflix, I have my thoughts, but that's for another video. I still encourage you to pick this book up. There are differences in the telling of the story, and some cases are not yet included in the series. And even though the story is already more than 15 years old, it's still a gem, or rather a pearl worth discovering in the vast sea of fantasy we have right now. And that's a wrap. Tell us what you think in the comments down below, and I'd be interested to learn your favorite cases as well. And until next time, read on, awesome humans.